Hey guys, Bloody Vintage here. For a while I've been wanting to do a video on M1 helmets. It's probably the most commonly asked question. Kind of, what date is this? What war is this from? Is this an early one? Is this a late one? Is this a rare one? Is this a common one? And the honest question is, show me more pictures, is always what it comes down to. So I'm going to show you why and also what to look for. Because you're going to see these on Facebook Marketplace, in your neighborhood, at a flea market, and knowing these little things can help you pick up some good ones, or at least help identify yours if you got one from a friend or a neighbor, etc. So I'm going to go through a few of the different ones I have, and I have a few more down there as well that I'll get into as well. I'm going to sort of start to just go through on the most typical ones to find. So I guess you should note, I collect, if you want to say, the good ones. So I don't have a lot of stuff that you regularly run into, but I'll kind of talk about that. So we're going to grab a first example here. Okay. So we have, okay, what era is this? Is this new? Is this 80s? Most guys would look at this and say, yeah, 1980s M1981 woodland pattern is what this is. So that makes sense. Okay, it's a 1980s helmet. But let's look closer. So I'll show you what I do. Number one, I look at the helmet. Okay, so first of all, born to kill, blah, blah, blah. Some kid's written that. I'm sorry, you'll see that stuff. Anything that's quoted from a movie, etc., will usually be somebody writing their own graffiti. So don't get all hyped up that this is some Vietnam, Tet Offensive helmet, okay? So the first thing I'll look at is the chin straps. Okay, so I'm already excited because I'm seeing something that I like, and that it's a Vietnam era or a Korean era, late Korean era chin strap. And I just want to brief you in this video. I'm going to be giving a lot of generalizations. This is a beginner video. There's been multiple books, as you can see in the background, written with extreme detail. I'm not going to make a 7-hour long video and bring in all my experts. So please just be aware this is for beginners only. So all you M1 helmet nuts, which I'm one of them, you can calm down. This is just for people that are trying to identify their helmets. Okay. So you see that, that's great. So that excites me because what you'll often find, and I think I threw one on here, I thought I did, yep, is something like this, where you'll see, and mind you, I didn't hook these on all the way because the bales are bent on this, but I have so many of these chin straps from old helmets. So you'll see this angled design with this metal. The big giveaway is the button. I'll get into that one later. That one, as soon as I see that, I know it's been reissued after 1972 because they call it the M1972, at least from what I've seen online. So you can be guaranteed it's post-Vietnam. So I see these, and if I take a closer look, they're actually green painted. And the green painted, as I understand, are Korean War era, or at least later. I'm not saying in 1950 you're gonna see these chin straps, maybe in 53 and interwar and up all through Vietnam. And even beyond, they just kept reissuing helmets in any configuration. Okay, so that's kind of the basics. Now let's look inside. Okay, I can tell right away from the cross pattern, it's a pattern 64. Okay, that's good. And you can always tell because it's got a nape strap. And if it doesn't, you'll see these little connectors in there for the nape straps if it's missing. And it's fine. A lot of guys just took them out or they're just missing. They're a dime a dozen, at least for post-war ones, post-Vietnam. So that's great. So I'm gonna check out that. I like the look of the liner because I can tell it's not that weird green that you see from the 80s that has the obvious stamping saying, DLA, 86 or something like that. And that will usually have a removable suspension. So you'll actually see it in here, okay? So great. So I'm gonna pull it apart. The first thing I do is I pop off this. These are just clips that come apart at the top. You just pop them apart at the top with 2 fingers. If you can see that, it just comes apart. Don't be afraid to do that. You're not gonna break anything. And you're gonna look in here, and so I'm just gonna be upside down. So let's take a closer look in here. And you're gonna get into there. So you're gonna get a nice little stamp. that identifies the suspension, not necessarily the shell. So let's read that for a second. Okay, now I'm gonna read it. So great, it's July 22nd, 66, with a DSA number of DSA 167. So basically, again, experts, feel free to chime in. I believe that's the contract was opened in 66, the contract was to be completed in 67, but this one is made in 66. So anyways, I always say it's a 66, 67 liner, just because I don't exactly know the breakdown of that nomenclature. But experts, feel free to chime in. This also will usually be marked, but usually so faintly. This is the only good one I have. It says DSA-1, which makes it a 65. Look up your DSA numbers. Just Google DSA numbers US Army. Google will tell you exactly what they mean and what to look for. Then the sweatband. This is always pretty common and they don't bother me that much. So this one's a 77 dated sweatband. If you can see DSA 77 or DSA 177. Okay, great. So the sweatband's been replaced. Obviously, what's the first thing to wear out? Usually the sweatband's gonna be, broken, rotted, sweat through. Now I'm gonna look at actually inside here at the top, right up in here, there should be a marking, okay? It's gonna be really hard to show in the video, so I'm just gonna take a look. It says US 72. A lot of people are saying, oh, that's 1972. Possibly, but by the suspension, I'd say unlikely that they would have put in an earlier suspension in a later liner. So according to my book, which you guys should all get if you want to identify the post-war World War II M1 helmets by Mark Reynosa. Good little read. And it'll tell you, I'm going to look back at this because I actually might be wrong. I'm just trying to think that this should be a Westinghouse. Patterned 1964 Westinghouse. I can usually tell that because Westinghouse put a little stamp there, usually like a number, not all the time. You can kind of tell it just by the general tortoise pattern that's common with Westinghouse in World War II. Great. Yeah, so that helmet has kind of been identified now. And US 72 just stands for the stamp number kind of thing, or the run that they did. It's kind of like a heat stamp, but it doesn't really identify it much. Great, so I take it off, I just check it out. Okay, no markings, too bad, but easy enough to identify. Okay, great. And again, I know this is gonna take a long time. The next videos are gonna be a little bit quicker because this is gonna be the first one that I'm kind of trying to identify. So I'm gonna pull out all the flaps, and eventually a flap is usually gonna show me, ta-da, it's gonna show me some information there, okay? And so what does it say? If I read closely, it says DLA 100-84. It's a 1984 dated cover from a M81 Woodland. So that makes sense. Okay, so now I know that the cover is post-war. I'm gonna take it all off, and now let's look at the shell. Really, you only need to look at the bottom of the shell, in my opinion. Everybody likes to show the top. What is this? Show me the bottom. So you're gonna be looking for, is it front seam or is it rear seam? Front seam, World War II. Rear seam, post-war. Yes, they made them in 44, 45, and actually this is one of them. So a good sort of example to go off. So I see swivel bales right away, so I know it's later. That doesn't necessarily mean it didn't originally come with fixed bales. I'll explain that in a bit. Okay, so we're gonna take a closer look here, and I actually, oh my God, I have a heat stamp. So I don't know if you can see it there in any detail with the lighting. It's usually really hard to make out, but there's a heat stamp in there. It's almost always in this area. Later, I think RJ Stampings and maybe Ingersoll did them kind of right around where the bales are sometimes in here. And sometimes there's just no stamping, and that can lead to another thing too. So great. So I'm looking through, what number do I have? I got 1221G. So knowing what I know, it's a McCord, because if you look up heat stamp numbers on Google, you'll come up with McCord, and you'll see all that. There's a lot of hearsay around heat stamps and what they really mean. I like to generally believe that they roughly mean the date they were made, because they are chronological. So this one dates it to, again, don't quote me, because I'm just going off my memory of what I looked up, but like late 44, early 45 kind of thing. And again, don't quote me on that. The list is online. I'd look at it right now. I'm just not going to pull it up in the middle of the video. Okay, great. So I'm kind of excited. I got a World War II era, technically, shell. And it was disguised all along with a 1980s exterior, a Vietnam War liner, Korean War buckles, and a World War II shell. I have everything going on in this helmet. So it's up to you what you want to do with that. Sometimes if you know, I really like the shell and it's a nice one, I'm not going to cover it up with a very common M81 cover. It depends what you collect. If you're collecting different eras, you can definitely keep in this configuration because it's very realistic. That being said, I sometimes, you know, just keep the shell and make it more into a World War II one. And then last thing we're gonna look for is the sweatband, or sorry, the headband. And actually this is exciting too, because if you look at it, it doesn't have cat eyes, which should be there. This should be at the back, but I kept it at the front to show you. And it says Band Helmet Camouflage US. You'll see a bunch of different types of printing on there. Anything that says Camouflage US is pretty much gonna be Vietnam era. Again, don't quote me on that, but the cat eyes that I'll show you in a bit doesn't come out till later. Great, I'm gonna sort of speed ahead really quickly here. Okay, great, we got another one. I've done this up. Rubber band, usually means the US Marine Corps. I found this in Canada, so you know, Canadians use that too, believe it or not. This one's roughed up. It's been rusted through. I just like the worn look of it. Gonna look underneath, no chin straps to go out of or go off of, bummer. I look inside, okay, now I'm seeing something interesting. So you see this little circular loop here, whereas this one was solid, okay? This is the later one, okay? And this is going to be pretty much Korean War into early Vietnam, or kind of interwar period. So mid-50s to until the Pattern 64 liner came out. Okay, these are a little bit harder to ID because they don't always have a nice little stamp on the inside. And I should say they actually don't really stamp the suspension. So that's not going to help me actually, unfortunately, stamping the suspension. So the only real way to date this is, number one, you're going to actually look at the color of the webbing. So this is an OD7 green versus a, hopefully I have one here ready to look at. Oh, versus an OD3 khaki. This is a reweb, so not a perfect example. But if you take a look, pretty obvious. So the OD3 webbing, khaki, was only in World War II, okay? So great. So we got that, circle. Again, the other big thing is know that little neck nape, they had this early style nape strap. So you can see the difference there in between the nape straps. Whereas this one was a detachable one. That one was permanent and it had a little support that would go in there to kind of keep it your head tighter. And then the other telltale sign is these two little, I guess what do you call them, like a pedestal hook, whatever. So those things is what your liner leather chin strap would hook into. Great, so I'm gonna take a closer look here at the center, and I always tell you to look there. So this one is, if I look, K-Pack 5152. Pretty common stuff for that interwar period. Take it off. Okay, it's got the little hole in the front. That's usually indicating, you know, the pre-pattern 1964. So all your World War II helmets in Korean War era will usually have that little hole eyelet in the front. They say it was to attach the badge. Again, experts can chime in. So again, I'm gonna look at the chin straps. Okay, these ones are pretty rough. One's missing, one's there. Again, this is more of a painted black, so it's going to be more of a Vietnam era rather than the painted green, which is kind of late, what's it called, late Korean War. And then, you know, you look at the little, even if you want to call it a J-hook, right? There is a little bit different, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to uncover this and see what I got. Okay, so what do I have here? I'm going to look underneath. Okay, so I like what I see so far. So the rim is stainless steel or manganese, depending on the maker and the era. They made those even in the 70s with RJ stampings, so don't be so zealous if you do find that. But I'm gonna go look, and you know what? This, it's actually hard to see. There's a weld right there. It's a front seam. Okay, I'm excited. It's a front seam swivel bail. Probably gonna be World War II era. Now, do I have a heat stamp in here to help me ID it further? I do. It's a little bit cooked, but you can see it if you look really close in there. And again, sorry, you won't be able to see these. So sometimes what I do is I even will take a flashlight, shine it at different angles. You can really see it. It's stamped so randomly that sometimes if I angle my flashlight the right way, it'll hit the stamp perfectly to be able to see it. So goof around until you see a stamp. Don't sand it down, please. But, you know, if you want to, it's your helmet. Okay, so it says, if I look closely here, okay, I can actually make it a 504B. Okay, that's pretty exciting. So that's kind of a mid-war heat stamp. They started at 0. They pretty much went up into the 1200s. So mid-war. Again, I don't have the sheet in front of me, so I'm not even going to say the year, but mid-war, World War II. Sorry, mid-McCord production World War II. So it would have been like 43 into 44. Great, well, I'm just going to check for a few other things. Okay, this one doesn't have it, so I'm not going to bother showing you all the other details. And then again, like I said, pull out the flaps. And I realize this video is way longer than I thought, but I'm going to do it as good as I can. So there we go. I got a DSA 67, so a 1967 cover. That's nice. The other thing that you'll get to know, and I'll see if I can pull one out, is that sometimes there's the short flaps and the long flaps. Long flaps were the later design, short flaps were the earlier design for the Mitchell cover, which I think the first contract was in 59, from what I saw. Anyways, helmet experts will chime in. Oh, let's just keep chugging along. Okay, great. Another band, U.S. Marine Corps, again, could have been added. Vietnam cover, chin straps again, looking actually painted green, so probably Korean War. Gonna look inside. Okay, that's nice. That's an OD3. Gonna take a closer look at the inside. Again, gonna be hard to date, but I see an F. That's gonna be Firestone. There's all the markings online or in these books. You should really get the books, super helpful. And again, the sweatband is actually dated 86. It's been reissued. I literally just took an extra one I had and put it in. You're gonna find that potentially. There's no reason they would have used these later. Okay, so I'm looking, so this has been repainted, like sort of glossy, so not necessarily original paint on the inside. I've helped myself out and I started to print these little notes inside of what the heat stamp is. So it's an M216. Okay, I thought we were talking about just numbers. Now there's letters at the beginning. So M216 is a McCord, and it was the contract that ran from 1951 to 1958. So heat stamp will be up there at the front where I showed you. I'm gonna look at a few other things. I already know this is gonna be a rear seam swivel bail because it's a 50s dated one. And you notice I'm not really taking off the covers of these. It's because I'm going to show you some other examples with the covers already off. So let's get into that. Okay, here's a nice one as well. Okay, so I can pretty much tell this is World War II just by the profile. They were a little bit taller. If you really want to get granular, you can actually put a ruler down and something across and measure the depth compared to a post-war helmet. And these are always going to be a little bit deeper. Okay, I see the stainless steel rim. Okay, great. I'm going to flip it over. You know, a Korean War liner, not ideal, but still, you know, works just for my display right now. I'm gonna look inside. What do I get? Okay, another Firestone. Okay, so Firestone, probably post-war. Some of these were re-webbed wartime as well. So they would have, you know, once the khaki stuff got all ripped out, they'd put OD7 in it and keep reissuing it. Great. Okay, I'm gonna take it apart. Okay, I don't see any bails. Okay, so that's sort of a tough one. So the reason they eventually went with swivel bails is because fixed bails were, they were prone to snapping off because they were just welded on. And I'll show you some of those examples so you can see where it would have been welded here and here. Now, the big indicator that this was at one time, and that was so nicely marked, is, see that little dot? It's actually a little punch dot to indicate to the factory where it gets welded on. So you'll even find swivel bails with a punch dot. That probably means it was a fixed bail that broke off, and then they had to resurface it into a swivel bail when it got updated. Again, heat stamp. This one, I don't know. Yeah, it is clear. Again, I have to get my flashlight out for this. and they're gonna be stamped everywhere differently. And again, I'm hoping you can see this. I'm gonna try and bring this one in nice and close for you. So you see it right in there, right? I'm not even gonna show you the detail of it because it's gonna take too long. It says 181A. So it started at 0. So this is an early one. I think I dated this to mid-late 42. Again, I'm just, you know, making up these numbers. Sorry, I shouldn't say making them up, but just doing off memory, so don't quote me. Again, this is kind of an interesting one because there's no eyelet at the front, so kind of a later pattern, Korean War era webbed. And again, there's all these names. I think that's probably pattern 1958. I haven't really seen the proper nomenclature out, so don't quote me on that. Okay, let's keep going quickly. Again, okay, this cover's a little bit different than the Woodland. This being the Woodland. Okay, so you see how it's like a little bit thicker of a pattern. This one has some blurred lines, etc. So again, people call this ERDL. Later it was RDF. I've had covers that were dated 69 ERDL that matched exactly ones dated from 76 that were technically RDF. And then I've had ones that were, you know, anyways, it's all over the place. So I'm not gonna quote ERDL, RDF. I think I already have a video on it, so check it out. Again, okay, I'm gonna check, okay, I'm liking what I'm seeing. So these are reproduction sew-on ones that I did because these were all had these. This is why it's good to identify. They all had the M1972s on them when I got them because they've been reissued. Again, don't kick me for taking them off. They're easy to put back on. So anyways, so I like what I see because it's sewn on. So sewn on would have been World War II and late World War II into early Korea until they moved to that fastener, painted green fastener that I showed you, which I think was called the T51, which was a chin strap as well, which I should actually show you after I'm done this little one. I look inside. Okay, this one, it's really rough on the inside, but I can tell it's a nice OD3. Now I'm looking and I'm like, okay, it looks like a modern chin strap. So don't go off that. It's actually a past Jeet or PAS GT sweatband from like a modern one from like the 90s or 2000s. Again, I'm just rattling off years, so don't quote me off them. I'm just trying to make a good video for beginners. So I'm not going to necessarily date it based on that. If I did, I would say this is from, you know, 98. It's not. So looking here, again, this other book will have really good indicators, elements of the ETO, and there's a bunch of other good ones. Indicators of, you know, the different types of washers they used, you know, if it was a low pressure liner, a Holley liner, a fiber liner, a high pressure liner, who made it, all that. I'm not gonna get into that detail today. I see a nice tortoise shell, makes me believe World War II. I can tell from the webbing, and actually says MSA right in there as well. And MSA was, you know, a mining manufacturer, mining safety something. Great, I'm gonna pull it off. Okay, it's got a cool little rank thing. I'm not necessarily gonna say that's any specific era. So again, it's got the hole there. Great, I'm gonna pull it off. I'm gonna check now this. Okay, so if I look closely, it's got a rear seam, swivel bail. Okay, so a bit of a bummer. I was hoping, because I had sewn on, that it would be, you know, later. Again, I did that myself. This is kind of more of a reenact one. So it's actually got an S on it and a 486A. So when you see an S, mine's actually right there. That's Schluter. Schluter was the only other real contractor of World War II. And I guess, yeah, World War II era. Come on, help me out. World War II era M1 helmets. Okay, so I'm not completely disappointed because it's a rear seam swivel bail, but it is World War II. Again, 1945, this really wouldn't have seen service. Maybe late in the war. It would have been more common for Korea and beyond. So that's cool. That's my only Schluter. And it also had a bit of a different profile. As you can see, they got rid of the stainless steel edge by near the end of the war, at least Schluter did. And again, experts, you know way more than I do about when that all went down. So that's cool, and the profile's a little bit different. This doesn't come out as far. It's a little bit narrower. Your liners might not fit in as well. But Schluters, they're kind of cool. It's always good to have one. But there you go. I thought it was an 80s dated, 70s dated one. And this liner, I'm not going to show you. Sorry, the camo cover. It's dated, I think 78. Okay, I'm really not going to get too much more wild because I think that kind of covers it. I'm going to show you, I guess, some better examples of obvious, you know, World War II era. You get the fixed bales there. Okay, these are sewn on repros. I do apologize. I've sold all my ones with originals. So you can see what a fixed bale looks like. Front seam, fixed bale. Front seam, fixed bale. Okay, this one's got nice finish on it too, if you can see that. Again, I know some guys like to recork theirs. If it has something with a little bit of, you know, nice texture, leave it unless it's been sanded completely off. Again, I see the stainless steel rim. And if you look inside, this was issued up into the 1980s. I found this, I'm in Canada, so I found it in Canada, and you can see that it's been remarked. And again, don't shoot me for, you know, remodifying it here. I actually didn't do this. This is a reenactor had already done this. So I can always replace those chin straps if I need to with the originals. It's a 282A, so I think kind of like a 43. Again, don't quote me on this. Go to Google McCord heat stamps, please, because I don't have them all exactly memorized. Gonna go to a few others. Again, I can tell World War II, front seam, fixed bale. You can pull up the liner to see, but it's pretty obvious it's not protruding. Okay, so what else kind of weird ones do we have for you? Okay, so here we go. This one's a little bit different because it's actually a paratrooper liner known as an M1C. M1C, you can always tell it by these yokes, these Y yokes that are in here, and if you're lucky enough to have the web chin strap. This is a 67 dated. Again, I know because I pulled off this to check the date. I'm gonna look inside to see who made it because I don't even remember what this one was. M24. I gotta look in my book what that is. A bunch of different makers made ones during the Vietnam War. And then you can also tell by the chin straps that they're the accurate ones that'll actually button in, okay? Great, so I'm gonna show you that, and then I'm gonna sort of show you what other things to look out for. Okay, great, oh, cool, look, it's a stainless steel rim. It almost looks like maybe front seam. Oh, this is legit, this is World War II. No, so you look inside, look, it looks so much different to, sorry, not to that one. What am I trying to compare it to? So there, so you see this pattern on here, this tortoise shell is what they call it. A lot of the Chinese ones, almost all of them, will just be straight up plastic. There's no marking, it's just a shitty plastic thing. White headband, sorry, sweatband. Not a terrible job, but it's just not real. They've done an okay job with these. It's a paratrooper liner. Again, if I look closely, it's been painted. It's been obviously recorked because you can tell that the texture, see how aggressive that texture is versus that texture. So it's a little bit obvious. The scrim is just too damn new. And don't worry, I bought this knowing it was repro. I didn't get fooled. But it can fool some people absolutely if you don't know what you're looking for. And again, another telltale sign. Look at the come on. They didn't have elastic like that in World War II, etc. So an obvious giveaway. Just the color of the helmet net in general, and then the swivel bales are even like they're these square. They protrude out a little bit longer than kind of a normal swivel bale would. You see that's a little bit more stainless, a little bit more rounded, and then these are just a little bit more square. And then I'm going to show you kind of what a helmet net should look like or could look like. And then I think we're almost done because I'm going to just keep on rattling off. Again, great OD3 webbed, that's beautiful. I'm actually looking in the back, that's OE7, that's weird. This is a Seaman paper, probably 1945. So they started to transition to this. Or maybe it was all ripped up and you know, they had to reissue it in Korea. This was fine, that wasn't, so they might have rewebbed it. Again, it's anybody's guess. But you see, it's nicely tied in the back. You get some detail in here. You can see it's kind of like a wrap type. There's a lot of helmet net experts. I'm not one of them because there's so many different types. I just kind of go by color and feel. Again, this is probably like a European one that I picked up kind of accidentally, / it was so cheap I didn't care. It's a little bit obvious with the color. You can just sort of see more of this nylon shiny, whereas this is a little bit more matted. It just looks proper, and that is an original net. And then you're gonna get into stuff like this. Great, original US Marine Corps helmet, $1,000, not a chance. So there's a repro cover. I don't still understand it, but there's a lot to do with the way the seam is, the run of the herringbone twill, things like that. Again, you know, a Korean War liner. So this could have been a Korean War type issue. Again, I see sewn on. I did that because again, it was missing. So again, don't shoot me. But I look and okay, it's actually a front seam, swivel bail. Okay, and sometimes what you'll find, this one doesn't have it, but sometimes you'll see the little punches still in there, the little punch holes I showed you earlier. This one's kind of pooched. Still a good one. It's still got good texture on it from World War II, and that's just a reproduction cover that I got. And then when you look at this, you'll sometimes see some clues. I see a little bit of blue there. That's, you know, UN NATO blue, so probably was repainted for UN use, reissued, etc., etc. You know, a few different ones, top blown out. This is more of an earlier. Again, look up all these dates online. There's a bunch of you choose Mitchell cover dates. You know, there's a stamp there. It doesn't have any date on it. It just has a contract number. Go online, Google that. There's also a really good US military forum article on post-war shell numbers, things like that. So I'll actually show you a little bit more of what a post-war one might look like. Okay, this is a greeny color, but it's actually still a Vietnam kind of era one. I don't know if it's actually dated in there. I think it is. I think Firestone did those ones with the yellow stamp at the back. This is more common what you would find, this green color. That's just night and day compared to what we just had. Sealed up. World War II. This dark olive matte drab and this green, I think they called like a 35WWII Munsell or something like that. Look it up, there's a whole color scheme chart. Again, it does have some nice texture on it. And like, look, I've got a stainless steel rim here. This is RJ stampings from the 70s. I actually don't even have a heat stamp in there, but all the other ones I did. You know, you can tell when you see the duct tape for the storage, for stacking, so they wouldn't all scratch together. I'm gonna try to find a year here on that. That's 1970. And these are gonna be the longer flaps, as you can see there, versus the shorter flaps, which you're gonna see if I can show you. Okay, actually that's a little bit of a longer flap too. But anyways, there's short flap ones, long flap ones. There's a lot to know about M1s, as you can see. I probably overwhelmed you. Unless you're an expert, you might be rolling your eyes at me, but you know what, this is just for beginners that maybe got their first M1 and they're trying to decide what it is. I think the biggest takeaway I'd like you to take from this video is that just because an M1 has a certain cover on it, or has a certain thing written on it, or has a certain chin strap, doesn't mean anything. It really comes down to who made the liner, and then you know, if there's any stamp on the shell, and then looking at the seams and the bails. That'll help you date it, figure out who made it. And again, I've seen repro liners and original M1s. I've seen 1980s liners and World War II M1s. I've seen OD3 World War II liners in post-war M1s. You're gonna see every mix possible because they either went into surplus, somebody goofed around with them, they were just reissued. There's M1s that went down to Brazil. There's M1s that came up to Canada during World War II. There's M1s that were overseas, obviously. And then Euro clones. I'll just sort of end on this. Euro clones, I don't have any because I'm in Canada and somehow we actually don't, I never have come across one. Maybe liners. If they don't look like this, like Euro clones are gonna look close to a liner like this. They might be like a blue color, a different color. They might have even like a full leather interior. They might have, you know, straps at the back and the sides. It's just those little, what is this? Usually it's gonna be your Euro clone. The shells look very alike, even the Belgian ones. I can't really tell the difference without the Belgian flag on it, but I've never held one to really look at it. Again, if they just look a little bit funny, it's usually gonna end up being a Euro clone. So anyways, I hope this helps. Like I said, the 2 books you should get. Number 1, this one, Spend the Money. It's gonna tell you everything you need about the markings, when different patterns came out, who made the shells, etc. This one, there's even better books out than this. I shouldn't say better, but more informative books about markings. And they'll tell you about that. And thinking of that now, I'm gonna just show you the different clip closures. So the latest one, the M1972, is this little button. Great Vietnam War. You're gonna get this fastener, like hook and ball type, and it's gonna usually have a P or a crown. The P I think might even be Canadian. Again, you're gonna kick me because I don't know if I have, okay, actually I do have one. This is an original half at least. This is World War II, and they got that J hook. And the J hook looks like this. That's exactly what it sounds like. It's a J. And based on the hook type and the buckle type that you'll see in those books, you can help date that as well. You know, once I get all those examples through my hands, I might do more videos. And again, there's a whole other nomenclature around this chin strap as well, this leather one. If it's green painted, usually pretty sure World War II. Really, really hard to find because like these are leather. They rotted off and fell off so quick. Kind of these black and brass a little bit later. I'm not really gonna comment much on these because I'm not an expert. So I guess the biggest thing is to figure out what's a repro and what's not. That's probably likely a repro one. You're gonna see the raw edges. The leather just looks too new, even though it's a nice painted brass though. Somebody just did an okay job. That is a little bit more obvious of the wear and tear that you'd expect to see in an old helmet. Okay, so that's pretty much where we end. Again, this is, you know, it's tucked in so you don't even notice it. This is a Korean War era M1C liner. And you can tell because the circle in the middle, OD7 color, and the yokes. Okay, so you're gonna get little clues like that. Anyways, I hope that helps. Last thing, again, this is probably just somebody goofing around, but it's aged with it, so you can be a little bit more confident that it might be original graffiti. Personally, original graffiti is really hard to come by, and honestly, it's hard to really verify anything about it, so don't get too hyped up on graffitis. And I think that's pretty much all the helmets I have to show you today. Again, this is just an example of a repaint that a friend of mine did for the 29th. This is my reenactor helmet. It's got a J. Murray liner. Man, doesn't it look legit? It does, but you know, it's obviously just too new. I believe they took a K-Pack 51 and they re-webbed it with OD3. This was actually an original front seam fixed bail, so I used it. Some kid had painted it up camo. It was just so obvious to me that it had been painted like within the last 10 years. It just looked like shite. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna repaint it and do that. Because I never, ever, in my opinion, repaint any of these or refinish them unless you really need to. You know, this one's rough. Personally, I'm gonna keep it, but again, it's your helmet. Do whatever you want with it. I just try to keep them as original as found as possible. That's just my prerogative, as much as I can. And anyways, like I said, experts, this video really isn't for you. You probably already know all this. You can probably school me on a bunch of it. so you don't have to go nuts in the comments. This is for beginners that are just looking to get like a base understanding of what exactly M1 helmet did they find today. Hope that helps. There's also some other great videos on YouTube. Check them out. But I just want to get some M1 knowledge there today. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. And again, if you ever find like a sweatband, that's a sweatband out of the helmet. It's 50s dated, herringbone twill, just because of the pattern on it. So if you find those things out in the wild, you know, chin strap accessories are always good to come by. Helmet cover, it doesn't always need to be on the helmet. If you just find just a shell, don't be afraid to rebuild it if you want to into something. So anyways, hope that helps.